And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Connie Lacey from the American Jail Association, and on behalf of our Board of Directors and staff, we welcome you to today's webinar on Greening 101 in Corrections and Understanding Sustainability in the Jail Setting. If you're not familiar with the American Jail Association, we are a national nonprofit organization that supports the professionals who operate our nation's jails. It is the only national association that focuses exclusively on issues specific to the operation of local correctional facilities. And we serve our jail community through professional membership, including our newest benefit, iConnect. And that member benefit allows you to put questions up on our website, and you will get responses from all across the country from other members to help you with your problem, help you do things a little bit more effectively. So please use that if you are a member now. We also offer professional development seminars, customized training, online training, training materials, and we're so happy to have just come back from the 23rd National Jail Leadership Command Academy in Huntsville, Texas. We also have 3 certification programs that you are welcome to request information on: Certified Jail Manager, Certified Jail Officer, and Certified Correctional Trainers. And last but not least, before I turn it over to Tommy, we invite you to Austin, Texas for our 35th Annual Conference and Jail Expo. It's going to be May 22 through 25, 2016. Please visit greenprisons.org on our Eco Expo aisle and many other companies that will help you get into the subject that we are excited to present today. So I am going to turn it over to Tommy Norris from greenprisons.org. He's going to introduce himself and his colleague Barry Brady, and we appreciate everybody signing on today, and we look forward to your questions at the end. Just in case, tips for technical difficulties. You should be listening through audio either on your voice over IP or just through your phone. You can use the question function in your control panel to ask questions, and we will be addressing those at the end. And if for other technical assistance, please just go to the top right of the control panel. So I think that we are ready to go. Tommy, take it from here.
Thanks, Connie. I appreciate it very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to jail practitioners around the country. I've been in the corrections business for more than 40 years, starting out as a correctional officer and retiring in 1999. Admittedly, most of my institutional experiences is prison-related, but since my retirement, I've done a good deal of work with jails as well as teaching. I got into the sustainability game by as a result of being asked to chair a committee for ACA on sustainability. It was that association's first attempt to look at issues around greening or sustainability. And you'll hear me talk about sustainability as opposed to green, and I'll explain why later on, but you can use the terms interchangeably, whatever you're comfortable with. One of the people that I asked to join us today, so that you would be able to also, when what I have to tell you doesn't seem to resonate, so you want to hear from a real jail practitioner, I've asked Barry Brady, who runs a small jail in South Central Kentucky, the Marion County Detention Center. Barry, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself and describe your jail a little bit, and then we'll hear more from you as we get through the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. Yes, my name is Barry Brady. I'm actually, it's 2016 marks 30 years for me, but I've done the prison and jail operations, and of course in the state of Kentucky we have elected jail administrators, and I am on my 4th term as the elected jail administrator for the Marion County Detention Center. It's good place, Marion County, Kentucky.
Thanks, Barry. I appreciate it. And for those of you out there who are not privileged enough to live in the bluegrass and you wonder if you heard that correctly, yes, our jailers are elected. We're very fortunate in Barry in that his was the first accredited jail in the state of Kentucky. And it's really a showcase in a lot of different ways, and one of the reasons I asked him to join us today. And again, we'll talk more about that later. The presentation today is going to be fundamentally based on the publication came out in 2011, written by Paul Sheldon, and about the greening corrections technology guidebook that was published by NIJ, and this publication, now some 5+ years old, began to give the fundamentals of sustainability in corrections, and form the basis for what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to move through these because we've really already talked about them a little bit. What Paul's book publication talked about was really the establishment of a triple bottom line, and it's what kind of guides what Green Prisons does today, and really where we philosophically think sustainability has to be for prisons. First of all, whatever you engage in, whatever kind of sustainable or environmental practice you decide to pursue, it has to make sense physically. It should generate revenue or minimally produce savings. And if it doesn't do that, you can't, in most instances, afford to do it. This is not I'm not an environmentalist. What I neglected to say in my introduction is that people start talking to me about gigabytes and megabytes, and my eyes sort of roll back in my head, and I get lost really quickly, and come back with my fundamental question: how much does it cost? What will it save me? And when can I expect to make my money back? And if you're talking to somebody, if you're considering engaging in one of these practices that we're going to talk about later on, that's the first question you have to ask yourself or the vendor you're going to be working with. And if you can't come up with the right answer for that, the positive answer, it probably is not something you want to engage in unless you're a lot better funded than most of us are today. Secondly, many of these practices really provide the opportunity for what we call green-collar jobs and training for offenders, whether it's recycling or the installation of a new HVAC system or somewhere in between. Almost all of these efforts really create opportunity for you to take advantage of and find meaningful work and training programs for inmates. And because of the emphasis that we hear regularly now about reentry, this is a program that basically comes to you for nothing and can be very, very relevant when you're looking at finding programs that will prepare inmates for the return to the community. And finally, obviously, any of these sustainability programs should impact the environment positively. They should enhance your institution's positive perception in the community. I know that many of you end up frequently making presentations to local civics clubs, the Lions, the Legion, the Chamber of Commerce, whatever, explaining what your jail does and trying to help folks understand the very complex mission that corrections has. And this is one way that you can begin to talk about exactly what it is that these sustainable practices that you're embarking on can mean to the community in which your facility lives and operates. Imagine being able to go to the chamber or to make a presentation in front of county commissioners and say, because of your efforts, you've diverted 20,000 pounds of solid waste away from the landfill in the last quarter, or 200,000 pounds even. We'll talk a little bit about solid waste in a little bit, but that's just one of the many examples that I'd want to give you. So I want you to keep this triple bottom line in mind as we move forward. Again, for sustainable practices to be accepted and to make sense, they've got to be cost effective, and they've got to generate savings in some way or another, minimally, and some of them will even generate revenue. The importance for job training for offenders can't be overemphasized. And finally, these practices will demonstrate that you by your presence in the community, you consume a lot of utility, you produce a lot of waste, and when you can say, hey, we're aware of that, you know, our jailers may be the only ones in the country that get elected, but we're not the only ones in the country that have to deal with the real politics of the community in which they're located. So we just encourage you to keep that in mind and to take advantage of the many positives that come with practicing sustainability. Okay, and Connie mentioned questions, and I encourage you, some of the stuff I'm going to say may sound a little off the wall, it may be new to you, and I encourage you to type those in, and Connie's going to aggregate those and come back at the end of the webinar, and we'll discuss them rather informally. So if you have any questions along the way, don't forget to type those up. So when we talk about 7 steps to sustainability, and this is sort of I mean, you could argue with this list. You could say, oh no, there's really 8, or there should be 4, or whatever. But this is the way that Sheldon and excuse me, this is the way that Sheldon initially grouped things in his paper, and they make sense. So there's no hard and fast rule. You may move stuff around, but certainly you can't talk about sustainability. You can't talk about cost savings. You can't really engage in this without talking about lighting and energy. The bottom line is that nobody is ever going to make us turn the lights out. They might eliminate a position and make it a little harder to get the job done when the light bill keeps going up, but they're never going to turn off the lights. Folks don't want that to happen. They don't like dark jails, and frankly, neither do we. So we'll talk a little bit about lighting and energy and some ways to save some money on there. And the other thing we'll talk about, and certainly you're going to hear me talk a lot about money, because that's the reality of what we do. But I want you to keep in mind that I'm a practitioner. I'm not a technician. I'm not an environmentalist, and frankly, you can't scratch too deep on any of these topics and expect me to have an answer. I'll find you somebody who does, but I'm not your guy. But if you want to talk custody, if you want to talk security, if you want to talk the value of programs, I'll talk to you about that all day long and twice on Sunday. And some of the examples that we're going to give you will specifically focus on those areas, and particularly on the importance of lighting and energy. We're going to talk about HVAC, the challenge in keeping very old facilities warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And what are some things that you can do to impact that? Some of that's related to energy, some of it because it's such a high dollar item. That's why we sort of treat it as a separate topic. Plug-ins. What's a plug-in? It's exactly what it sounds like. If it's got a plug in it and you punch it in the wall, that's a plug-in. How you manage the electricity that plug-ins draw, whether it's the computer that you're participating in this webinar on, whether it's the phone charger sitting on your desk with that you know, always blinking little LED light, whether it's any of the various and sundry motors and pumps, etc., which takes us to our next category. Anything that plugs in is what we're talking about there. Motors and pumps. The bigger your facility or the older your facility, the more these components place a drain on your energy bill. So we're going to talk a little bit about motors and pumps and some new technology surrounding them that can make a difference in your bottom line. Materials management. In some ways, that's a little bit of a catch-all, in that we're going to that sort of encompasses everything from recycling, waste management, chemicals, a variety of those kinds of topics, but they're where big ticket items really can make a difference. So we'll talk about materials management. It's also one of the places, frankly, that we refer to as low-hanging fruit. Some of the easiest, cheapest things to do. Water management. It's kind of interesting, and Barry, I think, will talk a little bit about this when we talk about his facility in Marion County towards the end. But there are some places in this country where the cost of water and accessibility to water is beginning to outstrip the cost of electricity or gas or energy, particularly with the declining cost of gas and oil. We'll talk briefly about water management. And finally, human capital. What's human capital? Human capital are the inmates that are the consumers of a lot of the energy-related costs, producers of a lot of the waste that your jail produces, and the staff who work with them. So we'll talk a little bit about all 7 of those items. None of them will be dealt with in depth today, but there'll be opportunities in the future, and particularly if you have questions about any one of these, be sure and hang on to those, as I mentioned earlier, and we'll deal with them at the end. All right. With that in mind, let's start talking about lighting and energy. Whether we're talking about indoor lighting replacements, outdoor lighting retrofits, whether you're talking about replacing fluorescents with T8s for T12s, or changing the ballasts, or going to LEDs, plasma lights. There's a variety of things that you can do as it relates to lighting that can make a significant difference, not only in the cost of operation, but also in the security of your operation. Here's a piece of technology that I certainly had not heard much about before, but this is a direct supervision pod. Pretty standard. I'm sure most of you have something that looks like this in your jail. And the picture on the left was this pod before it was illuminated by metal halide lamps. There were 30 lamps that produced the lighting for this facility. When they were switched out, they reduced the number of fixtures by 17, so there are only 30 plasma high bay light fixtures in this pod, and you can look and see the clarity of light, how much easier it is to discern shapes and people, and how much better it's lit. And one of the things that I think is just really important here is, from a security point of view, look at the difference between these two pictures and the ability to observe and identify the offender in both these pictures. And if this guy was up to something in the picture on the left versus the picture on the right, much better chance of being able to identify him and anticipate what it is he might be doing. Your camera, if you wanted to, and I don't know whether the officer did or not, could in fact zoom in on whatever that is in the guy's right hand there if you have that capacity in your cameras. But in any event, it's not just about the money. The fact that they cut the number of fixtures from 17 to 13, and they operate at a much lower voltage. The anticipated ROI or the payoff on these lights, I think, was somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5 years. So basically, the upfront cost to replace these lights would be recovered in about 3.5 years, and from that point forward, the facility would be able to take that savings for lighting that pod more effectively, more and certainly with heightened security, and do it at almost a third, little better than a third of the cost. So there's lots of reasons to think about that. The other option is we're hearing a lot now about LEDs, and there was a time not too long ago that LEDs were very expensive and really not terribly effective either in high mast applications or even exterior in applications in climates particularly where you had weather extremes, either extremely hot or extremely cold. Now there are a number of LED lights on the market that in fact can operate every bit as effectively and give you a much better, a much sharper, much clearer light, and do it at significantly less cost. HVAC, and when we talk about HVAC or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, when we talk about this, we're talking about a variety of things. We're talking about insulation. We're talking about door seals, plugging leaks, making sure that periodic maintenance addresses any problems that you find. You know, it's one of those pay me now a little bit or pay me a whole lot more later. And I know, and if I've got any facilities guys on the webinar today, I know that when you get asked to crunch dollars, a lot of times that PM is one of those things that tends to take the first hit, and it's obviously your decision to make. But every time that you have to do that, administrators, you're asking your maintenance folks to really get into this pay me now, pay me later kind of decision-making process. You can look at multi-zone heating and cooling. Your office does not need to be maintained at 68 degrees after you go home after 5 or 6 o'clock until you come back in at 7 o'clock in the morning. You know, turn the AC off or turn it up or put it up, better yet, put it on an automatic thermostat that does these kinds of things to ensure that you're only using the kind of heat and cooling that's required. Installing or using on-demand water heaters. That's as opposed to a boiler. That's a change that Barry made at his jail not long ago, and he can begin to tell you how that's working out for him. When you upgrade, when things break, when that rooftop unit goes out or the boiler or whatever, make sure that what you're replacing it with is high efficiency units that are designed to operate efficiently and save you money. Conduct your life cycle assessments. Look at different kinds of heating and cooling units that may be different. The roof that I'm showing you here is from the Shelby County Detention Center in Memphis, and on the roof of one of their 43 buildings. This is part of a pilot that has since proven so successful that they're moving forward with this on a number of other buildings. This is solar thermal hot water. And if you notice the difference when somebody asks me, that these tubes, I describe them in my highly competent way as big black fluorescent tubes. In fact, these are ceramic collectors that operate and collect the ultraviolet rays whenever the sun comes up. It doesn't matter if it's cloudy, if it's raining, if it's snowing. If the sun's up, it's producing ultraviolet rays. And both in Shelby County and in other institutions where this system has been employed, they've registered temperatures in excess of 200 degrees of water coming off of the roof. Obviously, if you're going to use it for domestic water, it has to be mixed with cooler water. But what that means is that your boiler doesn't have to fire nearly as often. This same heating system can also be used for space heat and eliminate the need, or reduce the need, certainly, for conventional heating fired by gas or oil or electricity. Again, most institutions that are employing these solar thermal systems are experiencing paybacks somewhere in the neighborhood, if it's just for domestic hot water, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 plus or minus years. Imagine after 3 years, you're heating all your hot water for free during the daylight hours. With a little bit of creativity, the adjustment of shower times, and some of that stuff, you can dramatically impact your the cost of energy for heating your water, for showers, for cooking, for any kind of domestic use during the day. And depending on the size of the boiler you've got and whatnot, or mixer, you know, that'll carry you even into the early evening. So these solar thermal applications are really work very well. This particular unit is put out by Solar America Solutions. There are others, but these guys, what they've done is they have a particularly specific patented application that allows for temperatures that some other folks can't get. The third item is plug-in appliances. And again, this is really, if it's got a plug in it, you want to try and control the cost of operation and the frequency of operation. If you can afford to replace older appliances, refrigerators, freezers, any of that kind of stuff, you know, everybody's got that old refrigerator that was there when you were a rookie, and it still keeps on running and chugging away, and that's where everybody keeps their lunch, and you brag about it, you know, now 20 years later being that's the old icebox that was here when I got here. It's older than you are, rookie. That kind of thing. It may well be, and it may still be keeping stuff cold, but at what cost? And so I encourage you to take a look at that. Look at incentive programs. This talks about TVs, but I would tell you, look at incentive programs across the board, and look at the rate you are being charged by your public utility. This is not to cast aspersions, but sometimes utility companies, particularly if they've adjusted your rate, if you've done some sort of construction, some sort of renovation, whatever, and you've they've hung a new meter for the purposes of construction at a higher rate, sometimes forget to change that rate back when the construction is done and you get back to your contract price again. So an audit of your utility bills every once in a while doesn't hurt anybody, and it ensures that in fact you continue to pay the contracted price for your electricity or gas. I have a colleague, and this is I can't prove this, but it certainly is an interesting argument. If you walk into a lot of jails around the country today, you find a lot of guys that particularly those in those sections where you have longer term prisoners, everybody's got their own TV, and typically they're the big tube clear plastic kind of TV that they've bought in the commissary. My friend thinks that he could pay for new LED TVs for every inmate and pay for them out of the savings by switching to LED. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would tell you if you're still selling old tube-type TVs in your commissary, I strongly urge you to get with your vendor and consider purchasing a much more energy-effective television. I'm going to skip down to the use of timers and motion detectors for unintended areas, and I'll come back to the next to last bullet. It's a relatively simple move to change out a switch and put a motion detector in, particularly in administrative areas. You know, the problem is that frequently we leave an area, we think we're coming back, then we don't come back, and we go home or we go out and make rounds or whatever, and so those lights, you know, continue to burn at full force for all night, an extra hour or two, whatever, when they could have been turned off. If you use timers and motion detectors, unused lights, unneeded energy will be saved, and again, you'll end up paying for that pretty quickly. The use of power strips for desktop computers. This seems almost like a no-brainer to me, and that doesn't mean take the power strip and bury it underneath the desk where somebody has to stand on their head to be able to turn this thing off. But if you've got room for a monitor on your desk, you've got room to lay a power strip up underneath it or somewhere. I encourage you tonight, when you get ready to go home and you're ready to shut things down and you've turned off your computer and you know, you stuck your cell phone in your purse or your belt and you're getting ready to go, look around your desk and see how many of those little red eyes are beeping at you. For every one of those, you're using electricity. Maybe it's only 2, 3, 5, 6 watts, but you multiply that by, you know, 50, 60, 100 of these little LED indicators, you're wasting a tremendous amount of electricity every night. Set it up so all staff have to do is flick a switch and shut everything down. It will start in the morning, I promise. I remember the old days, and when we got this instruction when I was still working, and it's sort of like, well, I'm not going to turn my computer off because it's liable not. It's cantankerous. It's liable not to start in the morning. The realities are that they always do. You know, and the kind of cost savings that can be generated from that is really very significant for virtually pennies on the dollar in terms of what it costs to get power strips to put those to give you that capacity. Excuse me. Motors and pumps. I get out of my element here really very quickly in terms of talking about a lot of technical stuff about this, but what I do know, what I have learned about motors and pumps are that when you flip the switch on one, it doesn't start up at peak performance. It has to wind up to that if it's an old-fashioned motor. And conversely, when you turn it off, it still has to wind itself back down. The new high-efficiency motors and pumps have technology in them that allows them to eliminate that start up and start down or wind down, and as a result, they consume significantly less energy. Again, as we talked about with appliance, the use of Energy Star pumps, motors, whether you're replacing a pump in a freezer or an air conditioning unit. There are even lubricants now and treatments that you can put on even older pumps that will increase their efficiency and particularly when it comes to coolants. That you should certainly take advantage of and learn about and use that in ways to make little investments that can ultimately make long-term improvements. The picture you have on the right at the top there isn't very self-explanatory, but it's what the inside of a pipe can look like when mineral deposits can begin to form on them, and everybody has them. Every region of the country, one of the hazards of running large quantities of water through pipes and into boilers, etc. And the conventional treatment for that has been the use of salt and other chemicals. There are now ways that you can use technology that essentially provides a harmonic tone for water. Frankly, for me, it's a little bit of magic. But what it does is it breaks up the mineral deposits that are already present in your pipes and boilers and goes farther to eliminate their ability to form in the future. So that it extends the life of the boiler. It makes the boiler operate more efficiently. It eliminates the corrosion of pipes, etc. It's an external fix, and it eliminates the need for salt. It's just another way that technology has begun to intervene in institutional operations to assist us in working in a more efficient and effective manner. Materials management. And this is, as I mentioned to you earlier, this can be everything. And almost all of it has a minimal investment and a maximum reward. And start with recycling. You're producing the waste anyway. In many instances, you're already operating a recycling program. My question to you is, are you making anything off of it? I had the opportunity about 2 years ago, and I won't mention the jail because I don't want to embarrass him, but I had a friend who had asked me to stop by and just sort of do a little walkthrough, and we went to his recycle area, which he was extremely proud of, with good reason. It was a large jail, about 2,300 beds, and they had retrofitted or taken over a large room. This used to be a farming operation, and they had taken over a large room that had at one time been the butcher shop, and they had an old baler in place that looked like it had come across on the Mayflower, and 5 or 6 inmates and an officer supervising him, and they were taking cardboard and paper and plastic and producing these huge 3 by 3 by 3 cubic bales of this waste, and it was all stacked up. And I complimented him on the operation. It was clean as a pin, and really they had a lot of stuff. And I asked him, I said, so how much are you making off of this? And he looked at me, and he was pretty proud of himself, and he said, we got the baler for free, man. We got the baler for free. And I said, that's a good deal. I mean, it's a little old, and, you know, I'm sure there are better ones out there, but free is free. That's a good price. I said, but how much are you making? And he looked at me a little funny. And then he said, well, we not only got the baler for free, but the recycler, he'll come out whenever we call him, backs his semi up, we load it, we get the forklift, and we got an inmate here who can run a pretty good forklift, and he loads all these bales up on the forklift, and he takes it right on out of here. And he doesn't charge us a dime. And at that point, it was really very, very clear to me, as I'm sure it probably is to some of you, that what he didn't realize at that time was that the vendor was basically providing him with some less than top of the line tools, and he was providing all the commodity, all the labor, all the expensive parts, and he was basically taking that truck and driving it to the bank because he was keeping 100% of the value of that recycled material. The jailer was just pleased to be able to get that stuff out of his jail. He didn't realize how much money he was truly passing up. Now, obviously, this gets driven to some extent by the size of your jail, the kinds of agreements you're already in with local government and this, that, and the other thing. But it's something that I truly, truly urge you to consider, because as a result of my visit there at this particular jail, they fired the contractor. They went out and bought their own. They fired the contractor, went out and bought their own compactor. He came in, and the first month that they were in business got $4,000 worth of recyclables, and it didn't take them long to pay off the baler, and the rest is history. He's now not only recycling the materials from his own jail, he's recycling materials from several other government entities around the jail. And this is an opportunity. He now has more inmates with full-time work, and he's generating significantly more revenue that he can use in other kinds of green programs, etc. He also uses it for staff training and for some program stuff. Something that I also urge you to consider is food waste and gardens. One of the things that a number of agencies are going to now is their own garden and or greenhouse, depending on the climate and space and those kinds of things. And I realize if you're in an urban setting, there are some limitations here. But for those of you that do have a little ground around you, every state in every county has a county extension officer who has a master gardener program. And in most instances, these folks will be happy to come out at no charge to you and help you establish a garden program. In those instances where you don't have access to that, there are other resources. I encourage you to take a look at the Insight Garden program out of San Quentin. Let Us Grow, another horticulture-related program out of Oregon. You can access both of those from our website at greenprisons.org. And the value of being able to have gardens, even if you can't put the food on the main line because of food service contracts or you don't have enough to do it for everybody, grow the stuff, grow the vegetables in the summer and give it to the food bank, give it to school lunch programs, whatever. The value of giving inmates something productive to do that helps them contribute back to the community that they're from can't be overstated. Gardens also provide a good place to dispose of food waste. Every offender, every inmate, on average, produces 1 pound of food waste a day. So if you have 2,000 inmates, you're producing a ton of food waste a day. If you have 200 inmates, you're still producing over a half a ton of food waste a week. It takes up a lot of space in the landfill. It's expensive to haul. It stinks. It's smelly. It draws rodents. It's you know a absolute red hot target for any kind of food or health inspector. So there's lots of reasons why you need to take a look at that. There's a couple of ways to get rid of that food waste, other than putting it in the dumpster and waiting for it to leak out, and then get 2 inmates out there in January who get a water hose and try and hose it down, and then you got all the ice, whatever. One is traditional windrow composting. And if you have the space to do windrow composting, and you have someone who has the expertise to make sure that the temperature gets maintained and it gets turned on the proper frequency and is otherwise maintained, that's free. You can get rid of all that food waste for free. If you don't have the space or you don't have somebody with the expertise, there's now a system out or a process out called an in-vessel composter. And that big stainless steel behemoth in the middle picture in the bottom is another one of those or is one of those in-vessel composters. This one is particularly this one's done in use in Ohio in about 7 or 8 locations. It's a Swedish manufacturer. It's called Big Hanna. And basically, you take all the food waste once it's been reduced to a slurry, which basically is running it through a garbage disposal, except that it doesn't go down the drain. It goes into a bucket that an inmate carries and pours into this machine. And 8 weeks later, you have a usable, marketable compost that comes out the other end. It's odor-free, it's clean, it's effective, and it calls for an investment up front. But when you contrast that with the elimination of your trash hauling contract that is hauling all that stuff to the dump, plus your landfill, tipping fees, etc., not to mention the security issues of the trucks going in and out of your gate, it really can be worthwhile and pay for itself again in about 3 to 4 years, depending on the cost of some of those fees. After that, you're getting rid of your food waste for free, effectively. Finally, and again, this is a large category, so I'm really skimming over stuff, but consider the chemicals that you use. All the stuff that has to get locked up and inventoried and whatnot. The move towards green chemicals is really taken over our industry at this point, and many agencies have already moved to them. They're not like the old ones. These are effective. They work. They clean. They come in all kinds of dispensable methods. But the ones you see in front of you are individual packets by portion pack. But you can look at a variety of these kinds of chemicals and control how much you spend, get the same result, and not have to spend the time, the energy, the resource in inventory and security, and you eliminate the custodial hazard that might allow for somebody to weaponize these things. This slide is just another different kind of recycling operations. What you will find, and probably many of you already have, is that inmates will get on board with this stuff with a little bit of encouragement. There was a facility in Indiana. The officer took it on his own to download a lesson plan from the Department of Labor, and as a result, his inmate crew that was involved in making sure that the cans were there, they got emptied, the stuff got sorted correctly, et cetera, et cetera. He gave them this course, which was basically a self-study, no cost to the agency, and these guys get a certificate in waste management from the Department of Labor. It's a little thing, but again, it really helps them along in terms of being able to be engaged and to be involved. All right, moving along, we've got one or two more steps here we want to talk about. I want to talk for a moment about water, and as I mentioned in the opening, water is rapidly becoming, in many jurisdictions, almost as pricey as electricity, particularly when your sewer bill is driven by how much water you consume. And somehow or another, some utilities have figured out if you take 100 gallons of water in, that produces 400 or 500 gallons of sewage going out, and there's a multiplier effect. So clearly, the less water you use, the less amount of fresh city water you use, whether it's for showering or washing vehicles or cooking or whatever, the better off you are. And you see some pictures of the low-flow shower heads, waterless urinals, and ways to capture water runoff from rooftops and cisterns and water barrels. But whatever you choose to do, I encourage you to look at water management systems. There are a number out there. The one that I have been most impressed with, and that I see almost everywhere I go where folks have gotten really serious about water management, is the one that ICON uses or produces, that allows the officer to control the number of flushes, the frequency of flushes, the amount of water that runs through the pipe, etc. That obviously not only has a financial component to it, but it also has a security component. You can't flood a cell if you can't flush the toilet. There's some other technology. Some of it is pretty cutting edge from overseas that looks at valves that control water into your jail to begin with, so that basically you dial that down during peak hours. And while it doesn't affect your fire suppression systems, or you always have water that you need on demand, but again, it's one of those things that you can manually control, or it'll work automatically and limit the amount of flow through your main. So if you've got a lot of leaks inside, for one thing, it helps reduce the water you're losing through those leaks. I've heard mixed reviews on waterless urinals. Clearly, if you decide to use them, you want to discourage inmates from deciding that they need to take a 5-gallon bucket of water and flush the urinal out. It defeats the purpose. It eliminates the cylinder inside that does the deodorizing, etc. Don't underestimate, particularly if you live in relatively temperate climates, don't underestimate the value of rainwater in barrels and cisterns that you can use for gardens, for landscaping, for washing vehicles, any kind of non-potable kind of application for water. There's absolutely no reason to pay for it at the same rate you do for water that you're going to use for consumption or for showering, etc. when you can redesign water runoff from parking lots and whatnot and recapture some of that water in a cistern or whatever, obviously that works to your advantage. But really step back and take a look at your water consumption and look at important ways to impact that. Finally, human capital. And I mentioned some of this at the beginning, but these kinds of sustainable kinds of practices and technologies and interventions can truly be useful in training inmates for jobs. There are jobs in the community, and a growing number of them. Specific incident, and although this is a prison application, it certainly fits. The Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections put a $1.8 million solar thermal system on their roof using primarily inmate labor with supervision and training from the outside contractor. That contractor was so impressed with the work that two of these inmates did that he provided them both with letters of employment and offered to hire them upon release at $25 an hour. One of them comes up for release in December, I think, of this year. The other one goes to the parole board in January. Don't know how that'll work out, but clearly $25 an hour to start walking out the door is a lot better than frying burgers at McDonald's. There are many jobs out there, and they're growing in number with employment opportunities for offenders. The more you're involved in controlling the presence of toxics, caustics, and flammables, the greener your workplace gets, the greater the benefits in terms of health, not only for inmates but for staff as well. It eliminates the probability that somebody will weaponize something, somebody will inadvertently be injured as a result of being involved in some accident that involves a toxic material. So to the degree that you can, protect your staff, protect your inmates, reduce your medical costs by moving to green chemicals. Finally, a quick word about working with vendors. This isn't a particular pitch for the AJA conference, but yes, it is. They have, as have several of the professional associations, opted to have a dedicated area in the exhibit hall where they can where you can focus exclusively on sustainable vendors. I encourage you to take advantage of those opportunities. First of all, to talk to people who are far more knowledgeable about the technologies than I am. But it's neutral turf. It eliminates the sales call. These folks, a lot of these folks are new. If they're not new to corrections, many of them are startup companies. They're small mom and pops. They don't know how to deal with government. They certainly don't know how to deal with corrections. It provides a really useful opportunity to talk to them on neutral turf and challenge them. Ask them the hard questions. Ask them, if you're going to embark on some sort of major renovation and you're going to throw down some big money for an HVAC system or a solar system or a new boiler or whatever, ask them to include training for inmates in the installation and operation of that, to make sure that the equipment, you've got somebody there who will, that you can utilize not only to maintain the equipment, but to provide inmates with opportunities for jobs when they get out. Most vendors will welcome that opportunity. The realities are that a lot of these guys are in the business to sell product, not install it. So they're more than willing to work with you on those kind of things. Capitalize on your own green practices. don't assume because you got a baler for free that that's all you're ever going to get out of it. Try your best to take advantage of the revenue these things can generate for you. But always, 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 when you're considering any kind of sustainable practice, make sure that the ROI fits your political reality. Back about a year ago now, I guess, or a little longer, I was approached by Barry because he had some unique issues as it related to his jail, and he asked me if I could help him out a little bit. And the result of that was the first sustainability audit that was funded by NIC. So, Barry, why don't you just take a couple of minutes, and we're pushing the hour, but why don't you take a couple of minutes and talk a little bit about your jail and why you asked for that assistance and what you did with it.
Well, actually, Tommy, it's a year ago tomorrow that we actually done the audit. I had a very good close friend of mine had worked for years in corrections. He'll be gone. He deceased a year ago today, so it was the day after that his untimely death that we had this audit. But as we was approaching this, we've got a facility here that was 18 years old, meaning the boilers, everything's 18-year-old. The HVC, all of the components, mechanisms of it were aging, and at that point, a lot of repairs and needing to be looked at in any way. So when I called Tommy, I said, I've got to make some adjustments. So why don't we look at your green prison initiatives and stuff. Of course, Tommy has been a very close friend of mine for the past 12 years. We've been back and forth about inmate programs and professional standards and operating jails and so forth and so on, and training, professionalizing training and staff. Nonetheless, we did get the letter written out to NIC. We got the approval, and on November the 17th of 2014 was when we did our audit, and it was kind of a powering effect because that morning Tommy shows up, and we have Dr. George Berghorn that's doing the audit for us. And of course, we come out of a turmoil thing where we just had lost one of my chief deputies, but we had an opening just like you would with ACA, where that we had the media, we had some local officials, the government officials there, and we announced exactly what we were going to do, and then, trying to pull those stakeholders and specifically my county government into the idea of looking at operating, more efficiently, looking at sustainability as we make some of these changes. So we brought the media in, and the radio, the TV stuff did the opening. Tommy and Dr. Berghorn did a wonderful job explaining some of the tech, I guess, systems that we would review and how they would review them. And it took about a 3-day process. But nonetheless, that actually put us on the front page of the local paper right then and there. So it went right out to the constituents. So then the officials, the government officials that our fiscal court and stuff, it's kind of has put their hand up behind their back there a little bit about making sure that we're going to look seriously at what our findings were. Well, our report came back, and there's a variety of areas that were very interesting, and some of them were so simple that we just said, why didn't we think of some of that stuff? It's the air pressure and rotating tires on transportation vehicles, the door gasket going to the training room, just some simple stuff that would be really quick fixes and return some savings. But most of all, what we found in Kentucky was that, first off is our electric rates in the state of Kentucky are very, very, very affordable, and also we're on natural gas here at the jail. So the gas prices and electrical prices are reasonable. So even though we could see and find some savings in those areas, it was still water use is the most significant portion of it. nonetheless, when we got done with the report, I mean, we ended up with a 35, 40-page report at the end of the process, which I was able to take back to my fiscal court. We used it as a planning and budgetary. There are already some things that we have that we've already put into place, and there are things that we have got scheduled to put into place at the jail. But of course, the most immediate that we looked at is looking at the water conservation, which we still have a couple more hurdles to jump to get that completed. But the report, and just to have that third party look at your bills, look at your usage, look at from year to year to year, and then the vendor stepped in and they're able to utilize the information as well when they are making making their bids for a solution to that energy savings and stuff. But nonetheless, we did do the tankless water heater system. We had again, an 18-year-old boiler that was crying for help and never knew when it was going to let us down. And one thing about a boiler is, especially when it operates the majority of your jail, when it goes down on Friday afternoon at 3:30, then it's probably going to be down for a little bit. You get parts shipped in, and especially when they get to age that, you just some things you just can't pick up off the local shelf to repair it. One thing that we're seeing some savings already with the tankless systems as far as gas use, but at the same time is I'm not without hot water. They put in a 10-bank unit. They do not run at the same time. They've got two on, 8 off, 2 on, and they just keep it's got a computerized system that rotates it from operating unit to operating unit. Nonetheless, if you have an issue with one of your units, you're not without hot water. It just eliminates that one and moves to the next one to do the function. The next thing is, they do have, they got a stainless steel main portion of the unit, which is 10-year warranty, and they was a lot more reasonable than putting a boiler in. So we're new at it. We've had those in for a few months, and so we're actually, everything is so new because we started most of the retrofits around July. We still have some installation of some systems to go into place as we made our 3-year plan with our government on trying to get this switched over. But there's things that we're doing now that a lot of folks out there are probably doing and not recognizing. And that is, even with new technology, as we're with inmate communication systems and the kiosk systems and stuff going paperless with grievances or medical requests or whatever those things are. I mean, without whatever kind of paper you want to process or inmates process. There's a lot of things that this type of review will open your eyes. And the thing of it is we involved our staff, and the staff got so in tune with the audit and looking at savings that, that even, George and Tommy have, been off and on here for the last couple of years. But this report was, this audit was done a year ago, and I've still got staff to this day, they kind of, hey, you know what? We was looking at this over here. You reckon if we could save some money if we did this differently or something? So it's a positive thing. I think it even educated the staff to look at their own homes and what they do in their own personal lives about being green, operating in with that kind of a mentality or thought. But you take our building with 31,000 square feet, 297 beds. I have federal contracts, military contracts, county contracts, and a large portion of state sentence prisoners. One of the other things I'd said the best that happened to our operation is Tommy has worked with me for years in looking at programs and keeping inmates active. and that typically does not happen in jail settings and stuff. You know, it's mostly, you know, time laying on your neck or whatever, how the sayings are. But nonetheless, is we have very proudly 297 beds, and I currently have 230, 240 inmates enrolled in evidence-based programming. Most of it's educational, book, self-help type stuff. We have counselors and stuff. Changed the whole atmosphere of the jail. It's got a educational atmosphere. We do some recycling on small scales, but most of it we do on a county level, and we send inmates out to it, so the county kind of is the main government agency over it. But it's just it's been a pleasure. But again, the savings once once the report got back, it was an eye opener to our county judge, to our fiscal court, as they move forward, and we're making requests on our upcoming budgets. I mean, it's just they can see the savings of doing the right thing. So, and that's a positive.
Appreciate that, Barry, and we're running. We need to get into some questions, so I don't want to put that off. But I would encourage you to be sure and check out the AJ website and information about their conference, and to come to the Eco Aisle and meet a number of us. Looking forward to being in Austin. Connie, what are we looking at in terms of questions?
Okay. Our first question is, and you knew this was coming, are there any kinds of grants or federal funds out there that you know of that could be helpful to start this type of program?
You'd think I wrote that one myself. It's one I hear pretty regularly. It's one I hear pretty regularly, and the short answer is they're really, really hard to find, and there's not much. You will probably do better if you're totally reliant on grant money for some sort of major expenditure. The problem is that most grants don't cover infrastructure. So even if there's programmatic dollars out there, helping staff learn about the value of energy saving appliances and stuff like that, they're not going to buy them for you. There are some non-traditional sources. You might look at foundations. You might look at something other than BJA and BJS, which is typically where we go to look for grants. We were very fortunate that NIC funded this TA for Barry, and if you'd like to have one done, I encourage you to contact them and see how their budget looks. For them, it's always a challenge. They take a precious little money and do a whole lot with it. NIC is not funded to do infrastructure work, but they can do technical assistance. So if you're interested in that, you can either contact them or contact me. But the unfortunate answer is no. Now, I have recently learned that the Department of Energy does have a state office in every state that does have some money available, but they come by different names, and there's different requirements in different states. I literally learned about that late last week, and so I'm going to be working to learn more about it, and you can reach out to me later on, and I'll be happy to share what I learned.
Okay. All right. Another one of our listeners wants to know, how do I get started, but I don't have any budget monies to retrofit my facility?
I would tell you that start small. Do the things that don't cost much money or any money at all. Look at plugins. Look at recycling. I mean, recycling pays for itself. I once had a warden tell me that he just couldn't make any money recycling, and I have yet to figure out how, because the realities are that the labor's there. They're the ones producing the waste. You probably already have blue cans around the institution somewhere. Look at stuff like that, and then make sure you're taking advantage of what you got. And just a little bit of effort will get you started. The other thing, and we didn't take any time to really talk about it today, is what's called the energy saving performance contracts, and basically that's for high dollar items where companies are willing to finance the installation of a new HVAC unit or a water treatment unit or whatever up front, and you pay them back out of the savings. Now, of course, the realities are then that for the duration of that payback, you're seeing some savings because you get to reap that, but what you're not getting is the total advantage of it until the corporate investment is paid off, and you do pay a little interest on it. But again, it's better than paying retail if you don't have it. So there are some strategies out there, but there's a lot of ways, and I encourage people to start small and take advantage of and learn from others. Look at look around the country. We'd be happy to help you with this. I'm sure NIC and others would be glad to point you in the direction of people who have been where you are. They're just now getting started. Or a year ago or so, they were just getting started, and now they're reaping the rewards. How'd they do it? What did it take? What did they have to do to change about their management? And again, we'll be at the AJA conference next spring, and that's one of the things we'll focus on.
Okay. Just FYI, the website for NIC is nicic.org. And, of course, AJA's website is aja.org if you have any questions, because I know that Tommy's information is listed on our website. Now, Michael would like to follow up on what you said about county governments having a Master Gardener program. What department would I talk to, and how do I find out more information about the Master Gardener program?
What you can do is reach out to your state land grant university in their ag department, in their agricultural department, and find out who is the county extension agent in your county. And again, whether or not they work on gardens, and particularly on jail and prison gardens, is going to differ from state to state, obviously, but that's certainly the place to start. If you try that and you still you don't get anywhere with that, feel free to reach out to me, and I can put you in touch with some folks that ideally will be able to help you out and help you get started.
Okay. We have just a couple more questions, but you've already answered them. Where can I go? How can I learn more? And I think you just covered those. So I tell you what, I'm going to turn it over to Tommy and Barry for some closing words. As far as AJA, thank you so much for joining us. And you see that we're just scratching the surface of this very important subject. So thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Barry. So I will let you two close out the afternoon.
Thank you, Connie. Barry, I'll let you go first. Any closing thoughts or words of wisdom?
Yeah, Tommy. I mean, first and foremost, ACA and AJA stepping up is, on a national level and giving, and us promoting this green aisle and the attention to where we can save the money. Is the main. I mean, that's the kudos. NIC stepping up with the assistance. It's just it's an effort that's well worth it. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Barry. And I would just echo what Barry is saying. And if there are any companies or vendors or potential vendors out there I encourage you to take a look at the Eco Aisle at AJA or the Green Aisle, and consider that as when you make your decisions about marketing and being at the conference. It really is a very special way. There's no other discipline within our business that's getting this kind of focus right now. So I encourage you to take a look at that. It's absolutely a pleasure for us to have this opportunity this afternoon. And as you can see on the slides, you can reach me by email at any time. My phone number is 859-582-1900. And I'll be happy to take your calls or answer your questions or point you in the direction of somebody who can help you out. It's important that we work together to save money and to continue to deliver quality services for taxpayers and safe, secure, and humane facilities for the offenders that we're charged with. Thank you for being with us. Yep.
I forgot to mention, I can't believe I forgot this. In the next issue of American Jails Magazine, Tommy has an article. It will be the November-December issue of American Jails Magazine that goes to all our members and to all the jails in the country. So I didn't want to forget that. So please look for that article by Tommy Norris, and it'll have some of this information and some more contact information. So sorry about that, Tommy.
Oh, that's fine. You may want to skip to the cartoon section, but in any event, we appreciate that. We appreciate that opportunity to communicate as well. And some of the stuff in there is in the article may be a little more in depth than what you got today. Again, thank you all so very much, and be safe.